Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to what is, I think, my first 60 FPS World of Tanks replay. Now this is nothing to do with me getting suddenly a new graphics card or anything, it's just I think the client has been steadily optimized to the point where with my existing setup I can more or less do 60 FPS, although I think it does dip once or twice, notably during this video. I might need to turn down some of the graphics settings if I'm going to do this in future. But yeah, it purely is on the basis of the optimization of the client, and it means that for current replays and well, for after this date obviously newer ones than that, 9.15.1 and newer, it will sometimes be the case that there'll be 60 FPS instead of 50. So, this is Dieseldahl, and he's in the Scorpion, except it's not the new Scorpion, not the Scorpion that you're seeing running around all over the place, especially on the NA server, where you can get it through a rental mission for a short period. This is, in fact, the original and best Scorpion, oh, well, maybe not and best, the original Scorpion, let's just stick with that, the M56. The American Tier 7 Premium Tank Destroyer. Now, it's actually not that dissimilar a vehicle. In terms of firepower, they are rather different. This has a 90mm gun, which is essentially a French 90mm in its penetration stats, but it's also got very good heat ammo. It's 275 average pen on the heat, and that actually puts it over and above what the Canonier Jagdpanzer had when it came out, with essentially the same 90mm. It had the same, like, 212 pen, except at tier 8, and worse heat ammo, because reasons. But that now has, of course, been buffed. But aside from the gun, with the Rheinmetall Scorpion having the big, beefy 128mm, this and the Rheinmetall are basically the same in that you don't have any armour to speak of. You really do have to rely on your teammates to take the hits for you. And that makes carrying games somewhat more difficult. Now that shot there was kind of funny. I suspect that at least part of the crew hitboxes are outside of the armour model, because despite losing no health, he lost a loader. Yes, somehow his loader caught that Tiger II shell in his teeth, but it's fine. With a quick application of sticking plaster, he's back in action, because World of Tanks, yes. Now the matchmaking is a bit funny in this one. It's Kampanovka. There are 5 arties on Diesel's team and only 3 on the enemy team. That's the first oddity. The platoons, you can tell I've been playing a lot of warships recently. The platoons are all on Diesel's team, except one of them is a failed platoon of a Churchill and a Chaffee, and the Churchill is basically going to sit in the cap circle and be useless for most of the game. And despite the fact that the enemy team has fewer artillery, that means they have more actual tanks, and they don't have that fail platoon to deal with. So it's a bit mixed, and just the artillery alone on this map, it makes life very, very tricky for Dieseldahl in particular. He cannot take any risks when it comes to arty. Now he gets a nice hit into the 1357, who, as it turns out, is not running with a fire extinguisher. He was almost certainly using the premium food consumable, and so he burns out completely, and that is incredibly useful. That is some very, very nice RNG for Dieseldahl indeed. It means he doesn't have to worry about being spotted by that scout anymore. In fact, I think that was the last scout on the enemy team, because their SP1C managed to drown himself. The Chaffee died at some point, and then that 1357 just burned out. However, things despite the fact that they are 2 tanks up at the moment, things aren't actually looking that rosy right now. There are enemy tanks coming down the hill, and whilst they do have an IS-3 and their own ELC that's pushing up the zero line, they're not going to turn out to be particularly effective, unfortunately. So the ELC's just died. The Burt platoon actually went down there as well, but without anything to spot for them, they're going to be somewhat useless, unfortunately. Now Artie just takes out that OI, and the OI is going to basically whine about it for the rest of the match. And yes, it's very, very annoying when, especially if you're low tier, you get taken out by artillery, but he was the only thing, Artie was clearly pointed in that direction, he was the only thing spotted at that moment, and though he is, you know, maybe a lower priority target than something like the STA, sometimes you just take the shot that you've got. And he's just going to cry about it for the entire rest of the game. So the other tanks actually pop up in that little bit of, I don't know what to call it exactly, that little dip over there, slightly to the south of Diesel's position. So they're not trying to push all down the A line. So basically the OI went alone when he knew there was artillery, and then inevitably got nuked by artillery. So that was maybe a little inevitable. They've lost the Chaffee, which is not so good. The Churchill 1 has inevitably died. I mean, he was basically in the cap circle the entire time. He was just a free kill for the enemy team, essentially. And so, apart from one Burt in K0, this just leaves this pocket of artillery and tanks over here. And this is getting increasingly tricky because, like I said, this is a difficult machine to carry in. Now, the IS is still alive but doesn't have a lot of health. The Walker Bulldog, I think, has already taken at least 1 or 2 hits as well, and so they are, to some extent, depending on their artillery's RNG to take care of these guys. But Diesel is also in a position, he's double bushed, where he can actually shoot at them. Now, one massive advantage this has over the Rheinmetall Scorpion is, you know, you have traded not having the massive 128mm gun and a fully rotating turret for the fact that this is a much smaller, much stealthier machine. In the same position, I have no doubt that the Rheinmetall Scorpion would have been spotted already, whereas Diesel in his M56 can just sit here and plug away, although he's probably about to be spotted through that gap in the bushes by the STA. There we go. However, he takes out the Jagdpanther 2. Wasn't even looking, but he just had assumed, hoped, that he had the guy permatracked, and lo and behold, he did. And that's something you couldn't do with the Rheinmetall. It just doesn't have the rate of fire, whereas the 90mm on this thing is reasonably fast loading. Now, I can't tell you the exact reload he has because the replay counter still does not work in replays. We not only have the silhouette bug, but we still don't have a working replay counter either. And so, yeah, it's got to be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds. It can't be that long. And I would assume that he's going to rammer on this thing. But I don't know. That's just my guess. I'm just going by his aim time. I mean, that's one of the things with this and the Rheinmetall Scorpion, and really any of the turreted tank destroyers. The British turreted tank destroyers are the same, and the American turreted tank destroyers are the same. You have to stop and aim. Firing on the move is usually not a good idea. And the Challenger in particular, I think I remember looking up the stats, and the dispersion on the move is something like the absolute dead last at tier 7 if you discount artillery. So this is probably not that far off. Firing on the move is not a good option. You have to stop and aim. And so if you have to stop and aim, that means that you're vulnerable, and so you really do have to stay unspotted. And with the other Scorpion being exactly the same, and with the other Scorpion being so much more easily spotted, in some ways this is going to be an easier machine to play on a lot of maps. Or, well, maps that have any amount of bush cover to use anyway. Because you can get away with using bushes with this thing that the Scorpion just couldn't. It's a much taller machine. So we've come down to just Diesel Dahl and 2 allied artillery. And against them, there's the Tiger II, the Stuart Emile, who we know is probably slightly to the north somewhere, or slightly to the east rather, and waiting for the Tiger II to go in and get the spots. So this is this is not good. He doesn't have any armour. He's really got to rely on not getting hit, but it's reached a stage of the battle where he just has to accept that he's going to take some hits. Now the Su-41 does, I think it was the Su-41, he gets in hit on the Tiger II just before he dies himself. That's useful. It means the Tiger II has a lot less health for Diesel to work away at, but he's at a stage where he's just got to trade his own hit points. He doesn't have an option here. He does have the faster rate of fire, though. But even so, it's not good. It's kind of tricky. And there goes his ammo rack. So he immediately repairs that. There we go. He is safe from the Tiger 2 there, more or less, but he's not safe from artillery, and that splash just killed his commander. So, kills the Tiger 2, except then the Destroyer Mill turns up to the party, and that's GG. Now, the damage counter is at 4,500, but of course he got some blind kills on that shot. He got some blind kills, he got some blind shots on the Jagdpanther 2 as well, and it did kill the Jagdpanther 2. So, it's going to be more than that. Now, we're not quite done yet. There is still this M4043, and there's also 2 enemy arty, and while it might be tempting to assume that this would turn into an arty shotgun fight, at which point, RNG takes over, just the fact that the enemy team have an FE304 left alive, he easily has the speed to get over here, and he's the one that's actually been hitting this guy. So even if he misses, the S51 is going to be aiming at this position anyway. The Burt can give spotting to his remaining artillery teammate. But yeah, even if this guy gets lucky and hits the Burt before the Burt can hit him, the chances of him then being able to go and find the S51 in time, it's probably unlikely. So at best, maybe this would be a draw, but just the fact that there is a Burt on the loose, and that we know he's close by because he was firing at the M4043, means that it's probably going to be all over quite soon. I was sort of amused by the fact that the 43 went and sat in the water. Clearly it's a comfort thing for an artillery player, just, go and bathe in the cool waters and wait for the inevitable end. So there we go. It was in fact just under 5,000 damage done, with another 1,400, nearly 1,500 spotting and assistance. That was worth an ace tanker. He also had high caliber, Confederate and a tank sniper, and as we can see from the team list, not only did he have top XP out of both teams, but he was by far and away doing the majority of the work on his own team. Even the tier 8s on his team, the IS-3 and the Object 416, were not really doing a lot of anything. They had 1 or 2 kills between them, or maybe like 3 or 4 kills, might be more accurate, but still, I think they had maybe barely 1,000 damage between them. So it's one of those games where the result was good. He actually made a really healthy profit there of 90k credits almost, and top score, ace tanker, but a win would have been nice too. A win would have been really nice. And just a couple more of his allies doing just a bit more work maybe would have made the difference. Maybe could have turned that being from a loss into a win. But as it was, sadly, no. And I suspect that the other Scorpion would have had an even harder time under these circumstances, because it just would have been so much more easily spotted. It's just such a taller machine. And so, therefore, he would not have possibly been able to do that amount of damage, because he would have had more things shooting at him. He would have had to take cover more often. Anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this rather hipster replay, because, hooray, there's Scorpions around everywhere. Let's do a Scorpion replay. And let's do the wrong Scorpion, because I just roll that way, apparently. Yeah, I don't know. There's a certain kind of twisted logic going on inside my brain somewhere, but I wouldn't care to delve in too deeply. But yeah, hopefully it was an entertaining game to watch regardless. And if you thought so, you can leave any comments below. You can hit the like button. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, stay tuned for more.